The pen felt heavy in her hand. A simple signature, and her life would never be the same. She stared at the thick contract in front of her. The crisp white paper held words that seemed almost unreal. One night. No questions asked. $1 million. The ink had dried on every other page. The only thing left was her name. Her breath was shallow. Was she really going to do this? Across the table sat Adrian Wolfe, the man behind this insane offer. A billionaire. CEO of Wolfe Enterprises. Ruthless. Unforgiving. A man who had never been seen with the same woman twice. His sharp, ice-blue eyes studied her, unreadable, waiting. His presence was suffocating, yet strangely magnetic. His tailored black suit fit him like a second skin, exuding power, confidence, and a danger she couldn't quite define. Mia Carter was no fool. She had researched him before coming here. Every article, every rumor, every scandal. Adrian Wolfe was the kind of man who got whatever he wanted. And tonight, he wanted her. Her fingers tightened around the pen. Say yes, and she would walk away a millionaire. Say no, and she would leave with nothing. She had bills piling up. Her mother's medical treatments. Her younger brother's college tuition. Their tiny apartment barely covering their needs. She had no choice. Swallowing hard, she signed her name. When she looked up, Adrian's expression remained unreadable. He reached for the contract, scanning it briefly before slipping it into a sleek leather folder. Good, he said, standing. Then let's begin. Mia's pulse spiked. Now, she whispered. His gaze flickered to her, amused. You didn't think I'd wait, did you? Her mouth went dry. Adrian walked toward the door and held it open, waiting. She hesitated for only a second before following him out of the office and into the unknown. A night unlike any other. Mia expected a lavish penthouse. A private island. Maybe even a hidden mansion where billionaires indulged in their secrets. She didn't expect this. A sleek, black helicopter waited for them on the rooftop. The wind from the spinning blades whipped her long brown hair across her face. Adrian climbed in first, extending a hand toward her. For a second, she considered running. But where would she go? Swallowing her fear, she grabbed his hand. His grip was firm, strong, and unshakable. As soon as she was inside, the doors locked. The pilot nodded at Adrian, and within seconds, they were airborne. Mia tried to calm her racing heart. Where are we going? Adrian leaned back in his seat, his expression unreadable. Somewhere private. Her stomach twisted. That wasn't an answer. Minutes passed in tense silence. The city lights blurred beneath them as they soared higher, heading toward the coastline. The longer they flew, the more uneasy she became. Finally, after what felt like forever, the helicopter landed on a private airstrip. A sleek black car was already waiting for them. Adrian stepped out first and gestured for her to follow. Mia hesitated. This isn't what I expected. He smirked. Good. I hate being predictable. A shiver ran down her spine, but she forced herself to move. She climbed into the car, and the driver pulled away. 15 minutes later, they arrived at a massive estate overlooking the ocean. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the moonlight, making the mansion look both stunning and intimidating. The gates opened without a sound, and the car rolled inside. The moment they entered the house, Adrian turned to her. Do you want a drink? Mia shook her head. Her throat was already dry. She had thought this night was about one thing. But now, she wasn't so sure. Adrian poured himself a drink and leaned against the marble counter. You're nervous. No, You are, he interrupted, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. I get it. You signed a contract with a man you barely know, agreeing to something most people would never consider. Mia swallowed hard. You make it sound worse than it is. Do I? He tilted his head. Tell me, Mia, why did you agree? Her jaw tightened. She had expected him to treat this like a business transaction. Not dig into her reasons. She took a slow breath. It doesn't matter why. His gaze locked onto hers. It does to me. Silence stretched between them. The weight of his stare made her skin prickle. Mia had spent years building walls, surviving on her own. She wasn't about to break now. Finally, she lifted her chin. $1 million is life-changing money. Adrian watched her for a moment, then smirked. At least you're honest. She didn't know whether to feel relieved or uneasy. He finished his drink and set the glass down. Come with me. Mia hesitated but followed him through the grand hallway. The house was silent, the air thick with something unspoken. She expected him to take her to a bedroom. Instead, he led her to a massive library. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, filled with everything from ancient literature to modern finance books. A roaring fireplace cast flickering shadows across the room. Adrian walked to a leather armchair and sat down, watching her carefully. Sit, he said, motioning to the chair across from him. Confused, she obeyed. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Tell me, Mia. Do you believe everything has a price? She frowned. What? A price. For loyalty. Love. Trust. Do you think everything in this world can be bought? Mia blinked. Of all the things she had expected tonight, this wasn't one of them. Why are you asking me this? She said cautiously. Adrian tilted his head, his expression unreadable. Because most people do. And I like knowing where people stand. She hesitated. I don't think you can buy everything. Some things are priceless. A slow, amused smile crossed his lips. Interesting. Her fingers tightened in her lap. Why does this matter? Adrian leaned back, his piercing gaze never leaving her. Because, Mia, this night isn't what you think it is. Her stomach dropped. What do you mean? She whispered. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He placed it on the table between them. Read it, he said. Mia's heart pounded as she picked up the paper. As her eyes scanned the words, her blood turned to ice. She looked up at him, horrified. What is this? Adrian watched her carefully. The real reason you're here. Mia's hands trembled. This isn't about one night, is it? His smirk faded. For the first time, his expression was serious. No, Mia, he said quietly. It never was. Mia's hands trembled as she held the folded paper. The elegant black ink stood out against the crisp white sheet, but the words blurred before her eyes. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to focus. The first line sent a chill down her spine. This contract is not about a single night, it is about a choice. A choice? Her fingers tightened around the paper as she read further. The details made her stomach churn. She had signed an agreement, thinking it was for one night in exchange for $1 million. But this paper, it suggested something entirely different. She looked up, heart pounding. What is this? Adrian leaned back in his chair, watching her carefully. The real contract. Mia's breath hitched. The real contract? You thought this was just a transaction, didn't you? His voice was calm, measured. You take the money, spend a night with me, and walk away. Her throat felt dry. That's what you offered. Adrian smirked. That's what I let you believe. Mia felt the room tilt. The air felt thick, suffocating. She read further, her pulse hammering. The participant must agree to a 7-day arrangement. During this time, she will be tested in ways that challenge her trust, strength, and loyalty. The outcome will determine what she receives. Her grip on the paper tightened. 7 days? Her head snapped up. This isn't legal. You made me believe. You signed it, Adrian interrupted smoothly, tapping the leather folder that held the official contract. You didn't ask questions. You didn't read everything. You just signed. Mia felt a wave of nausea. He was right. She had been desperate. She had signed without reading every clause. Her voice was barely a whisper. What kind of test? Adrian's gaze darkened. That depends on you. A shiver ran through her. And if I refuse? He studied her for a moment, then leaned forward. You walk away now, with nothing. Her stomach twisted. Nothing. Her mother's hospital bills. Her brother's tuition. Her rent. She had counted on that money. Mia clenched her jaw. You tricked me. Adrian arched an eyebrow. Did I? She wanted to scream. But deep down, she knew the truth. He hadn't lied. He had just let her believe what she wanted. Adrian stood, his presence towering over her. The choice is yours, Mia. Her mind raced. If she stayed, what would happen? If she left, she would go back to struggling, drowning in debt. She forced herself to stand. Tell me what happens next. A slow, satisfied smirk crossed Adrian's lips. Good. He walked toward the massive windows overlooking the ocean. For the next 7 days, you will live here. Every day, you will be given a challenge. Mia frowned. A challenge? Adrian turned, his blue eyes piercing. A test. To see what you're really made of. She swallowed. And if I fail? Adrian's smirk faded. Then you walk away, with nothing. The words hit like a punch. He walked toward the door. Your first test starts now. Mia's pulse spiked. What do you mean? The lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the room. Her heart pounded. Adrian? No answer. Then, footsteps. Her breath hitched. What the hell is this? A low chuckle echoed through the room. Then came his voice, smooth as silk. Welcome to the first test, Mia. A test of fear. The air was cold. Too cold. Mia blinked, trying to adjust to the darkness. Her hands clenched into fists. This is a game. He's testing me. She took a slow breath. Stay calm. Then, something moved. A rustling sound. Close. She turned sharply. Adrian? No answer. Then a whisper. Right behind her. She spun, heart hammering. This isn't funny. Silence. Then, a hand brushed her shoulder. Mia gasped, stumbling back. Her pulse raced. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating. She gritted her teeth. Think. Stay calm. Adrian was rich. He had the power to make anything happen. This is a mind game. She squared her shoulders. I'm not afraid. A chuckle echoed again. We'll see. Then, the floor beneath her shifted. Her stomach lurched as she stumbled forward. She reached out, grasping at nothing. Then, light flooded the room. She gasped. The library was gone. She stood in an entirely different place. The walls were cold steel. The air smelled sterile. A dim blue glow illuminated the room, revealing security cameras in each corner. Mia's breath hitched. "Where am I?" Adrian's voice crackled through an unseen speaker. "Test 1 complete." Her pulse pounded. "What did you do?" Adrian's voice remained calm. "You lasted longer than most." Mia's fists clenched. "What the hell is going on?" Silence. Then, the door in front of her unlocked. A low beep, a hiss of air. Mia took a slow step forward. She didn't trust him. But she had no choice. With a deep breath, she walked through the door. Revelations. She stepped into a sleek hallway lined with glass walls. Behind each glass panel was a different room. And inside each room, people. Mia's blood ran cold. Some sat in chairs, others paced restlessly. Their eyes were tired. Some looked afraid. Her stomach turned. "What is this place?" A voice beside her made her jump. "Confused?" Mia turned sharply. Adrian stood beside her, hands in his pockets, watching her with quiet amusement. Her voice was sharp. "Where the hell are we?" Adrian tilted his head. "A place where choices have consequences." Mia's hands trembled. "Are they being held here?" Adrian didn't answer. He gestured toward the end of the hallway. "Keep walking, Mia." She wanted to scream. To demand answers. But something told her she wouldn't get them yet. So she walked. At the end of the hallway, a single metal door awaited. Adrian stepped forward, resting a hand on it. He turned to her, his gaze unreadable. "This is your second test." Mia's breath caught. "What's behind the door?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. Adrian's smirk returned, but this time, there was something dangerous about it. He pushed the door open. Mia stepped inside. And then, she screamed. A door to the unthinkable. Mia's scream echoed through the cold metal room. Her hands flew to her mouth, but the horror in front of her made it impossible to silence herself. The room was small, too small. Bright fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering slightly, casting eerie shadows against the stark white walls. But it wasn't the room itself that made her blood run cold. It was the chair. A single steel chair sat in the middle of the room, and strapped to it was a woman. Mia's breath hitched. The woman's wrists and ankles were secured with thick leather restraints. She wasn't moving. Her head was slumped forward, dark hair covering her face. Her pale skin contrasted against the harsh lighting. Mia stumbled back. Who is she?" Adrian stepped in behind her, his presence suffocating. "Her name is Olivia." Mia's eyes darted to him. "What the hell is this? Why is she?" "She made a choice," Adrian interrupted, his voice calm. Mia's hands clenched into fists. "A choice? What kind of choice?" Adrian walked toward the chair, his polished shoes clicking against the floor. He reached out and gently lifted Olivia's chin. Her face was bruised. A thin cut ran along her cheek. Mia's stomach twisted. Adrian turned to her. "She was in your position once." Mia's pulse spiked. "What do you mean?" "She signed a contract. Just like you." Mia felt the walls closing in. "What did you do to her?" Adrian didn't answer right away. Instead, he crouched beside Olivia, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "She had a choice. The same one you will have to make." Mia took a shaky step forward. "She looks like she's been tortured." Adrian sighed, standing up. "Not tortured. Tested." Mia wanted to scream. Every word he spoke made her more confused, more afraid. She forced herself to take a breath. "What kind of test?" Adrian's smirk faded. His eyes darkened. A test of morality. A choice that cannot be undone. Mia's chest tightened. What do you mean? Adrian stepped toward her. You believe life is simple. That good people do good things, and bad people do bad things. But what if you were forced to choose between two evils? Mia's throat was dry. I don't understand. Adrian's gaze didn't waver. You will. He pulled something from his pocket, a small silver remote. Mia stiffened. Adrian turned it in his fingers. You have two choices, Mia. She swallowed hard. 1. He held up a single finger. You press this button, and Olivia is freed. She walks out of here alive. Mia's heart pounded. That sounded good. But if you free her, Adrian continued, his voice dangerously smooth. Someone else takes her place. Mia's breath caught. She turned sharply toward him. What? Adrian tilted his head. Another person will be strapped to this chair. Another person will be given the same choice. And they might not be as lucky as you. Mia's hands shook. And the second choice? Adrian's lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. You do nothing. Silence filled the room. Adrian took a step closer, lowering his voice. You walk away. Olivia stays here. Whatever happens to her, happens. Mia's pulse roared in her ears. Her knees felt weak. She turned back to Olivia, still unconscious, still vulnerable. How could she just leave her here? But if she saved Olivia, someone else would take her place? Her stomach twisted painfully. Adrian watched her carefully. What's it going to be, Mia? The weight of a decision. Mia's heart pounded against her ribs. Her fingers twitched at her sides. Adrian made it sound so simple, two choices. But neither choice was right. She turned to Olivia again. Her breath came in short gasps. Then she spoke, her voice shaking. This is a trick. Adrian arched an eyebrow. Is it? Mia's head spun. There's no way someone else will take her place. You're just trying to manipulate me. Adrian let out a soft chuckle. Am I? Mia clenched her fists. You don't get to play God. Adrian leaned in slightly. And yet, here we are. She felt like the walls were pressing in on her. Her mind screamed at her to run. To fight. But she was trapped. What do I do? She wanted to save Olivia. She wanted to walk away. She wanted to do both. But she couldn't. Tears stung her eyes. What happens if I refuse to choose? Adrian smiled, stepping back. Then we wait. Mia's stomach churned. Wait, she whispered. Adrian gestured around the room. You stay here until you decide. Mia's hands balled into fists. And how long do I have? Adrian's expression turned unreadable. As long as it takes. Mia's heart thundered. She turned to Olivia again. She was breathing, barely. This isn't fair. Her fingers itched toward the remote. She could end this now. But at what cost? Adrian's voice was soft but firm. Choose wisely, Mia. The weight of it crushed her. And for the first time in her life, she truly understood. Some choices could never be undone. A silence filled with fear. Mia's breathing grew shallow. The weight of Adrian's words pressed against her chest like an iron fist. The silver remote in his hand gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, mocking her. Olivia remained strapped to the chair, motionless. Unaware that her fate rested in Mia's trembling hands. The choice repeated in her head, over and over again. Press the button, and Olivia walks free, but someone else will take her place. Do nothing, and Olivia stays here, possibly forever. Her fingers twitched at her sides. This is sick. Adrian's smirk didn't falter. Morality often is. Mia's jaw clenched. There has to be another way. Adrian tucked the remote into his pocket. There isn't. Her pulse roared in her ears. Then why me? Why Olivia? Why any of this? Adrian exhaled as if he found her questions tiresome. Because power isn't about strength, Mia. His gaze darkened. It's about control. And you are about to learn just how much control you really have. A chill ran down her spine. Adrian took a slow step toward her. No matter what you choose, someone will suffer. So, tell me, he tilted his head slightly. What does that make you? Mia's throat went dry. She took a step back. I'm not like you. Adrian gave a soft chuckle. You don't know that yet. An offer wrapped in chains. Mia forced herself to breathe. Her gaze flickered between Adrian and Olivia. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to fight, to do something. But she was trapped in a nightmare with no exit. Let her go, Mia whispered. Adrian raised an eyebrow. So, you're choosing? She hesitated. His smirk widened. That's what I thought. A long silence stretched between them. Then Adrian spoke, his voice almost gentle. Would you like to hear a different offer? Mia's stomach twisted. What? Adrian pulled up a sleek black chair and sat down, crossing one leg over the other. There's always a way out, Mia. But some doors, he tapped a finger against the armrest. Once you walk through them, you can never go back. She swallowed hard. Just tell me. Adrian leaned forward. You leave here with me. Mia stiffened. What? You walk away, with me. His voice was smooth, deliberate. And in exchange, Olivia goes free. Mia's skin prickled. Why would you want me to go with you? Adrian studied her carefully. Because you intrigue me. Her heart pounded. That's not an answer. Adrian let out a quiet laugh. You assume I owe you one. Mia's breath hitched. The room felt smaller. The air heavier. Adrian leaned back in his chair. I could force you to choose, but where's the fun in that? His gaze locked onto hers. This way, you willingly step into the unknown. Mia's fists clenched. And what happens if I go with you? Adrian's smirk faded. Then you will learn things about this world that very few ever do. A shiver ran down her spine. And if I refuse, she whispered. Adrian rose from his chair. Then Olivia stays. Her stomach dropped. A trap disguised as freedom. Mia's mind raced. She turned to Olivia, unmoving, helpless. This is what he wants. He wants me to feel trapped. Her nails dug into her palms. How do I know you'll actually let her go? Adrian chuckled. You don't. Mia clenched her teeth. Then why should I trust you? Adrian took a slow step closer, lowering his voice. Because the moment you walk out of this room with me, you'll realize. I've never lied to you. Something about the way he said it sent ice through her veins. She took a shaky breath. If she said yes, she'd be throwing herself into something far bigger than she could understand. But if she said no. She turned to Olivia again. Her bruised face. The silent plea in her stillness. Adrian's voice was patient. You have 5 seconds. Mia's heart lurched. What? Adrian pulled a sleek silver pocket watch from his coat and clicked it open. 5. Her pulse spiked. 4. Her mind screamed. 3. She turned sharply toward him. You can't just. 2. Mia's breath caught. She looked at Olivia. Do something. Do something. 1. Mia's lips parted. I'll go. The words left her mouth before she could stop them. Adrian smiled. And just like that, the door to her old life closed forever. A journey into the unknown. Mia's heart pounded as she stepped through the heavy metal door, leaving Olivia behind. Adrian walked ahead, his movements smooth, deliberate, as if nothing unusual had happened. The hallway outside the room was eerily silent, lined with sleek, dark walls that seemed to absorb sound. Mia's breathing was the only thing she could hear, shallow, uneven, on the verge of panic. She wanted to turn back. She wanted to run. But she had made her choice. Where are we going? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian didn't turn around. You'll see. They walked in silence, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet beneath them. The air smelled sterile, like a hospital. Cold and lifeless. Mia's hands curled into fists. She hated the way Adrian controlled everything, the way he made her feel like a puppet in a game she didn't understand. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. Tell me where we're going, she demanded. Adrian stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then he turned slightly, his sharp blue eyes glinting under the dim light. Somewhere you can't escape. A chill ran down her spine. Before she could react, 2 large doors slid open in front of them, revealing something Mia never expected. A private jet. A prison in the sky. Mia hesitated at the entrance of the aircraft. Everything about it screamed luxury, plush leather seats, dim golden lighting, and a sleek black interior. But to her, it wasn't a jet. It was a cage. Adrian stepped inside without a second thought and gestured for her to follow. She didn't move. His expression didn't change, but his voice carried a warning. Do you really want to test me, Mia? A lump formed in her throat. She took a slow step forward. The doors hissed shut behind her. Adrian sat down in one of the seats, unbuttoning his dark coat. Sit. Mia didn't move. Where are we going? Adrian poured himself a glass of amber liquid. Somewhere far from here. A sharp, suffocating feeling wrapped around her chest. And if I refuse to get on board? Adrian sipped his drink. You're already on board. Her stomach twisted. She turned toward the cockpit. Who's flying this thing? No one you can bribe. Mia's pulse hammered. Her mind raced with escape plans, but she knew Adrian had planned this down to the smallest detail. He saw everything. She took a slow breath, trying to steady her nerves. Why did you pick me? Adrian set down his glass. Because I need someone who can make difficult choices. Mia clenched her fists. I made a choice to save Olivia. That doesn't mean I'm one of you. Adrian smirked. Doesn't it? She gritted her teeth. You forced me. He leaned back. No, I didn't. Mia stared at him, anger rising. You manipulated me. Adrian swirled his drink. Is there a difference? A sharp pain stabbed at her chest. She hated him. She hated how calm he was. How untouchable he seemed. And worst of all, she hated the tiny voice in her head that wondered if he was right. The true cost of her decision. Hours passed in silence. Mia sat across from Adrian, staring out of the window as the city lights faded beneath them. A heavy exhaustion settled in her bones. What had she done? She had left Olivia behind, saved her, but at what cost? Now she was trapped with a man who saw the world as a game, and she had no idea what role he expected her to play. Adrian finally spoke. You should get some rest. Mia shot him a glare. I'm not closing my eyes near you. He chuckled. Suit yourself. She exhaled sharply, looking away. She thought about her life before this. The normalcy. The predictability. Now, she was being taken to a place she didn't know, surrounded by people she didn't trust. Was Olivia safe? The thought clawed at her mind. You can stop worrying, Adrian said suddenly. Mia turned to him, startled. Excuse me? Adrian leaned forward slightly. Olivia. She's safe. She was taken home. Mia's breath caught. Adrian smirked. You didn't think I'd break my promise, did you? She didn't answer. She didn't know what to believe anymore. Adrian studied her for a moment. Then he stood up and walked toward the back of the jet. Mia exhaled slowly, her mind spinning. She had saved Olivia. But at what cost? And what was waiting for her at their destination? She was about to find out. A prison with no bars. Mia stared out the window as the private jet descended, its wheels skimming over a long, private airstrip. A dark mansion loomed in the distance, surrounded by endless stretches of trees. No cities. No roads. Just an island in the middle of nowhere. Her stomach tightened. She wasn't being taken to a luxury estate. She was being taken to a place she couldn't escape. Adrian had been silent for most of the flight, watching her with that unreadable expression of his. But now, as they landed, he stood up and buttoned his coat. Welcome home, he said smoothly. Mia swallowed hard. Home? She didn't respond. Two men in black suits approached the jet as the doors opened, their faces blank, their movements efficient. They weren't security guards. They were something more. Adrian gestured for her to follow. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, but then forced herself to step out of the aircraft. The night air was crisp and cold, and a faint mist clung to the ground. The mansion ahead of them looked more like a fortress, tall iron gates, stone walls, and windows that revealed nothing. Mia's pulse quickened. What was this place? And why had Adrian brought her here? She took a deep breath. She had to stay calm. She had to find a way out. But first, she had to understand why. Secrets behind locked doors. They entered through the grand entrance. The inside of the mansion was nothing like she expected. It wasn't lavish and cold like the jet. Instead, it felt lived in. The scent of old books and expensive cologne lingered in the air. A fireplace crackled in the massive hall, its glow casting flickering shadows on the walls. Adrian removed his coat and handed it to one of the men. Then, without looking at Mia, he walked deeper into the house. Come, he said. Mia hesitated. Then she followed. Every step she took felt heavier. She didn't know what was waiting for her at the end of this hallway. Adrian led her to a room with tall bookshelves and a large desk. He gestured toward a chair. Sit. She didn't. Tell me why I'm here. He smirked. You already know. Her hands clenched into fists. She was tired of his games. I don't know anything, she said through gritted teeth. So tell me, what do you want from me? Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he leaned against his desk, arms crossed. I want you to understand something, he said. Mia's heartbeat pounded in her ears. What? He tilted his head. The truth. The truth that changed everything. Adrian picked up a file from his desk and tossed it onto the table in front of her. Mia didn't move. After a moment, she reached out and flipped it open. Her blood turned ice cold. Inside the file were documents, pages and pages of information about her. Her childhood. Her family. Her bank records. Even her medical history. She felt sick. How did you get this? Adrian ignored the question. Do you know why I chose you? Mia looked up, her chest tightening. Because you needed someone desperate enough to take the money? Adrian shook his head. No. He walked around the desk, his presence looming over her. You weren't chosen randomly, Mia. You were meant to be here. She flinched. That's not possible. Adrian smirked. Your father didn't think so either. Her breath caught in her throat. My father? Adrian's eyes darkened. Yes. Mia's stomach churned. What do you know about my father? Adrian was silent for a long moment. Then he placed another file in front of her. Mia's hands trembled as she picked it up. The first thing she saw was a picture of a man she had never seen before. But the name beneath it made her blood freeze. Daniel Rains. Her father's name. Mia's entire body locked up. This can't be real. Adrian's voice was calm. It is. Mia shook her head. Her father had died when she was young. That's what her mother had always told her. But now, staring at this file, she realized, she had been lied to. Tears burned in her eyes. Why are you showing me this? Adrian sat down across from her. Because your father was one of us. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Mia felt like the walls were closing in. No, you're lying. Adrian's expression didn't change. I don't lie, Mia. She stared at him, trying to breathe, trying to process. If what he was saying was true. If her father had been involved in this world. Then everything she thought she knew about her life was a lie. The final choice. Mia gripped the edge of the table. What do you want from me? Adrian leaned forward, his voice low and intense. I want you to take your father's place. The room spun. Mia shot to her feet. You're insane. Adrian didn't flinch. Am I? Mia's chest rose and fell in rapid breaths. I'm not like you. Adrian smirked. You are exactly like me. Mia felt rage boiling inside her. I'm nothing like you. Adrian stood up slowly. You think you're still innocent? She froze. Adrian's eyes burned into hers. You chose to take the money. Mia's breath hitched. You chose to save Olivia. Her fingers curled into fists. Adrian stepped closer. You chose to get on that jet. Mia felt her whole body trembling. I didn't have a choice. Adrian's lips curled. Didn't you? Silence filled the room. Mia's heart pounded. She hated that he was right. Every step she had taken had led her here. And now, she had one last choice to make. Adrian's voice was soft but dangerous. So tell me, Mia, will you take what's rightfully yours? Mia's pulse raced. Her mind screamed at her to say no. To run. But deep down, another voice whispered something else. What if this was always meant to happen? What if this was who she was meant to be? The weight of the decision crushed her. And then, she made her choice.